Hi everyone, this is Naomi. Welcome back to Naomi's Bookshelf. And here I have my Victober or October TBR. So basically in October I planned on reading 3 books for Victober, 2 books, one of which was for Victober as well as for Spookathon, and my blind date with a book. Now I will give you the spoilers right now. I only read 4 books in its entirety and a 5th one that I DNF'd. And I'm just going to go straight into the one I DNF'd because I really just don't want to talk about it forever. It was very difficult to read and obviously I DNF'd it. I tend not to DNF books, although I have no problem doing it. So that one was The Crossing Places by Ellie Griffith. Now this one was described with Blind Date with a book. They describe you the book in like 4 or 5 words and you can like figure out if you want to read it or not and if it sounds interesting. So this one was described as like medical, archaeology, rituals, kind of ancient things, which sounds so interesting to me. Detective, you name it. It sounded kind of like Bones, like the TV show Bones. Now, I got 140 pages into a 300-page book. I read the last maybe 50 pages to prove that I knew the ending, which I did. And it's the beginning of a series. And when I started, I was like, oh, clearly this woman hates herself. Like she thinks that she just keeps calling herself fat and she only wears black because she's fat and like nonstop. And it was very like, oh, that's really disheartening. I hope that like she ends up feeling better about herself. And it's just like a redemption arc in a sense, or a personal reflection arc. That's not the case in this book. And from what I can tell, not that I read the other books in the book series, but from what I can tell, it doesn't change either. Basically, multiple characters refer to her as fat or refer to her being fat. And it's never stopped. It's always just a problem. It's a part of her personality. It's very body shaming and like they just keep calling her fat. Or like at one point, one of the detectives thinks, oh, she's so fat. How could she possibly become a detective? Like things like that where I'm like, how does that play into it? No. Or, you know, she's so fat she can't wear color. Things like that. It was super annoying. And then the kicker is that pretty early on they mentioned that she's 12 pounds in British terms, which if I'm remembering the number right, that's 175 pounds for Americans or for Canadians, North America. And that's really offensive to me that she's 175 pounds and they can't stop talking about her being fat. I weigh more than 175 pounds. I know many people who weigh more than 175 pounds, and it's just offensive. It was so rude, and I can't believe this is a series, and people are like, this is my favorite series of all time, because I just couldn't get over it. The other elements were things I should love, but I couldn't get over the fat shaming. Now, I don't think this is a reflection of Blind Date with a Book. I think they chose, excuse me, I think they chose a book that is popular and has these contents, or has these items like medical examiner, archaeology, things like that, which sound interesting to me. However, it's popular. I don't understand why. It's just very offensive to me and very harmful for body fat, or for body awareness and body shaming. And I was forcing myself to pick it up. So I will be getting rid of this one shortly. I just really didn't like it, and I guess the ending, basically, as soon as the character was introduced, I knew he was the murderer. So, or the guilty party. So the first book that I read that counted for my Victober TBR, and I'm very excited that I finished all of them. I didn't think I'd do it, honestly, so hooray for me. But the first one that not the first one I finished, but the first one I want to talk about right now is one I've already made a video about, and I will link it down below. And it is A Study in Scarlet by a Sherlock Holmes murder mystery. So it's a mixed media story about Sherlock Holmes and Watson meeting and the first case that they ever do together. So it's lots of fun, and it's about them finding a body, or the police finding a body, and them going along and helping the first time Watson meets Sherlock. And so you're being introduced to all of Sherlock's tricks. 5 stars. I really enjoyed this, and I love the new way of telling the Sherlock Holmes story. Now, the next one wasn't such a hit. It was one that I was disappointed at, but also, like, I was surprised first and then disappointed, which is really interesting to feel that way about a book. But that would be Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. So I buddy read this with my cousin Megan, and we both have never really read this book before in its entirety, and we finally did it together because we knew we would never finish it otherwise. So I'm not going to tell you Megan's thoughts because that's her business, but I was reading it, and when I was reading the first half, I thought it was really well done. I was like loving how the plot was going, how the characters were going, the different development of everyone. I was really enjoying the whole storytelling method. I was enjoying it. Then about halfway, it just kept getting darker, and it felt like I was under a cloak when I had to pick up this book. I felt like I was constantly in a mood, not like I was depressed, but I was feeling under a rain cloud the whole time. So it just felt so dark, so spiritually dark, so emotionally dark, so mentally dark. I just didn't want to read it anymore, but I finished it because that's why my buddy read it. And the last 40 pages of this copy, I guess, made it worth, like, not made it worth it, but it kind of peaked up a bit. So I gave this one 3 stars. This is basically the story. If you don't know the story of Wuthering Heights, I feel like a lot of people do because it's just such a polarizing book. This is the story of this man named Heathcliff who owns this place called Wuthering Heights. And it's about his story as a child and then as an adult and the people around him. And this woman named Kathy who he grew up with and was in love with, or Catherine, and about their children. But it's mostly told through the story of Nellie, who is one of the housekeepers to a man who's visiting the area. So it's kind of, he's asking questions, she's telling the backstory of Heathcliff and Catherine and all of the people involved to this man. So Lintwood? I'm forgetting. Lockwood. Lockwood. So yeah, it was disappointing in the sense that I was so into it. I was surprised by how excited I was for this. I was like, this is going to be a 5-star book. This is amazing. I'm loving where it's going. I love the direction. I love the characters. And then suddenly it was like halfway through, I'm like, well, now I'm disappointed because it had so much potential for me. I just didn't like it. And I gave it 3 stars because I felt like it balanced out. The first half was great. The second half was not. And then the last 20 pages, or not 20 pages, but 40 pages were good enough, I guess. I did like that it ended well, in my opinion, but I did not like the build up to the end. So I'm glad I've read it. I will not be rereading it anytime soon. And if I do reread it, it'll probably be like in a year or so from now, maybe even 2 years, because I need a bit of a break. And I think I need that much time. The next one was one that I read for Spookathon, and I was going to read The Turn of the Key as well. I just didn't get to it. But that would be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Other Strange Tales by Robert Louis Stevenson. So this was a book of 5 short stories / novellas, as 2 of them were about 50 to 100 pages, and I didn't feel like those count as short stories. So I'm going to tell you the names of the other stories. It was The Body Snatcher, The Bottle Imp, Markham, and Weir of Hermiston. I hope I'm not mispronouncing that. Along with the Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So, in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, was very good. It's basically about everyone trying to figure out who Mr. Hyde is and what's going on. And if you haven't read it, I recommend you do. It was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. It was a reread for me. Actually, it's been counted for my challenge of rereading a book along with a shorter book. For Kate and Katie's challenge. Wuthering Heights was Angie's challenge of reading a female author I've never read before. So, back to this one. The Bottle Imp was a very clever one. I really enjoyed that one, actually. It was very interesting and dark, and also not at the same time. I really do recommend that short story. And then the Weir of Markham was interesting. It was my favorite, but it was good. Along with The Body Snatcher, I really enjoyed that one, and then Markham was good as well. I'm not going to tell you the whole plots of them. I think you should just go look them up or read them. They're really short. This edition alone is 240 pages for all 5, and I really recommend them. It was very spooky, very atmospheric. I really enjoyed reading them this Christmas, this Halloween season, and I gave it 4 stars, as it is not perfect, but it was pretty good. So yeah, really recommend this one, and it's short, and you can bunch it up over a few different days if you want. 1 chapter per day is what I kind of did, and I really liked it that way. So the last one that I read this month was a chunker that I was so proud of myself for reading, and I giving myself a big pat on the back for reading Vanity Fair by William Thackeray. Now this one is very interesting. It's I'm not going to go too much into detail because I am going to be putting out a video in the near future about this book, so keep your eye out for it and be warned. I'm going to be doing a big video only about this book soon. But this is about two women, Becky Sharp and Amelia Sedley. Now, Becky Sharp is very sharp. She's very cunning, very clever, very crafty, and she's always trying to get ahead in life. And she was the daughter of an opera girl and a French artist, so she is very like the poor of the poor, scum of the scum of at least of the nobility rankings and their views. Whereas Amelia, her father is working, but he is a businessman. He is wealthy. His son works in India, so they have a lot of money. And she's very much a doormat. So Becky's trying to make her way in the world. Amelia is just living life, having fun, being a very loyal person. And this book just follows them. They're two different lives and how they go about things. So how Becky pushes herself forward and how Amelia is a doormat to those she loves and is loyal to those even to a fault. It's very, very creative in a lot of the different terminologies and different ways used. Now, I'm going to try explaining how this book is written to you. So imagine that you go into the theater. Okay, you're going to go watch a play, and it's something that you've never really seen before or heard about before, but you're familiar with it, like pop culture. And then the director comes and sits down next to you, and he's like, let me just tell you what happened. So the book is about the director or the author telling you, like, you're watching it in front of you. And while they're like, just by the way, this is what they're doing. Like, it's very clever. I really liked it. And the first chapter is even prefaced before the curtain. The prologue is called Before the Curtain. So it's really like you're watching Vanity Fair, because it's all about these people and their society. It's a satire. That's the word I'm looking for, satire. And it's a satire about this, like, about their lives, about how everyone lives and what everyone does. And something else about this book is you need to know there's no hero. Okay, this is a book without heroes. No one is a likable main character. They are all, like, they might be likable in some ways, but you're always like, you're not really making good choices here, bud. Or you just question a lot of their personal choices, but that's people. So it's not a book of heroes, it's a book of people. They're all very flawed, they're all very interesting, and you just really feel for certain characters more than the others, but at other times you're like, ooh, I really hope things work out well, but you're like, no, not a way, because the way they're behaving doesn't deserve it. So it's that interesting balance of just being people being people. I really did love this. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it because, like I said, I'm making a big video about it. But basically, I recommend you pick it up. It is quite big, but it is worth it. And the audiobook was good as well. I will post the picture here and I will link it down below for where I found the audiobook on Audible, the link for it. But it is a good audiobook. And I am not sponsored for it, so I'm just going to link it down below. But I will say this, if you want to do the audiobook and physical at the same time, it's very difficult. So basically, you cannot follow the right chapters on the audio. The audio is like however many hours it is, over 30 hours. And every chapter is like an hour and 10 minutes on the Audible audiobook. And it doesn't actually follow the chapters in here. So you can be on chapter 16 in the audiobook and be like chapter 45, and you just have to figure it out on your own. So I used a lot of my e-reader things to find the right phrase and find where I was, but it's very difficult to go back and forth. So just something of note, if you choose to do audio and physical, it's not the easiest, but it is possible. But yeah, so that was my last book that I read this month. It was a very hectic month with reading. I did experience a loss of my grandmother this month, and it was difficult, but it's life. We're working through it, and things are getting back to normal. And life was just very hectic in October. As I only read 4 books this month, as you can tell, it was very different, and it has been, I think, the worst reading month I've ever had since I started reading books, really. Even as a kid, I think I read more than 4 books a month. So it's been a little interesting, to say the least. I'm glad that it is finally picking up and I can go into November with a bang, and really hope that it kicks me back into normal normal book routine. Thank you for watching. It was a good reading month in content for me, but not exactly all across the board. I wonder how you did. Was it all amazing or duds or a mix of both? What was your favorite thing you read in October? And what was your favorite Victorian novel? Because I might add it to next year's Victober TBR. Thank you for watching. Have a great reading day. Bye for now.